Hey everyone, I'm ZipSweep, and I thought it'd be neat to show off the Splatoon 2 dev build today. And I want to say first real quick, yes, this is the official dev build. I'm not going to explain how I got my hands on this. And also, if Nintendo is watching this, if you take this down, then that means that Pearl / Marina / Fry / Big Man / Shiver are all in a poly relationship, and Big Man is a dom. So anyways, let's get into the video. So what I want to talk about in order is starting off with the kits, some of the balance changes, and then the maps, and then some of the menus in this. And yeah, I just kind of want to point out on like the most interesting stuff out of the bunch versus like showing up every little thing, because like if we show up every little thing, then like it's gonna be like 2 hours long of a repeated process over and over again. I'm not gonna do that because let's say for like some of the old scrapped stages, and I say quote unquote stages, they just kept using the same thing over and over again, so I'm not gonna go over with that. But that's kind of like a deep dive of like what Nintendo used for like to make the game itself for Splatoon 2, and just see what things were like before they were officially released. And we'll start off with the kits. So the following kits that were scrapped was Custom Range Blaster with Curling Ray instead of Curling Bubble, Clash Neo with Sprinkler Missiles instead of Curling Missile, Rapid Pro Deco with Burst Armor, holy shit, instead of Wall Armor, Carbon Roller Deco with Sprinkler and Inkjet instead of Burst Bomb and Auto Bomb Launcher, ew, Gold Dynamo with Mist Armor instead of Splat Armor, Price Slasher Nouveau with Splat Bomb and Auto Bomb Launcher instead of Splat Bomb and Rain, Custom Dually Squelchers with Splat Bomb and Armor instead of Splat Bomb and Rain, which again, holy shit, Light Tetra Dualies with Sprinkler and Splat Bomb Launcher instead of Sprinkler and Auto Bomb Launcher, Dorella Brella with Mist and Splat Bomb Launcher instead of Auto and Splat Bomb Launcher, last but not least, Tenta Sorella Brella with Wall and Armor instead of Wall and Curling Bomb Launcher. Some of these kits were definitely an upgrade, but a couple of these kits were 100% downgraded, and for the right reason. I think that even with Rapid Pro Deco, or just blasters in general, with how they were in Splatoon 2, especially being like nullified because of armor, I feel like Rapid Pro Deco would have been a really dominant weapon just because of Burst Bomb alone. I think it'd be able to go against the weapons that had armor and like would have issues with armor, but because of Burst Bomb, I think it just completely shits on armor weapons, honestly, because you're able to throw like a Burst Bomb in it, does like 35, and armor has 30 HP. So I think if you're able to throw a Burst Bomb first, and then you're able to attack them, which I think have been a way more proficient way to counter armor players in general. So I'm kind of sad they scrapped that kit, but I'm glad they did scrap this kit as well, because I think this kit would have been really, really OP, all things considered. Like, as someone who did play Dually Squelchers in Splatoon 2 in like the first half of the game until they like gutted it, I think this kit would just dominate the entire game. I think Nintendo would have made this 230p instead of 220p in the final game and the latest version of the game that we have as well. But otherwise, outside of those comments for the two really good kits for Rapid Pro Deco and Custom Dually Squelchers, I think every other kit was an upgrade other than that. Now let's go over with some balance changes. Actually, I lied. Let's go over weapons that were named differently than the final game. These are mainly just going to be for the dualies and Brellas, but we'll go over them anyways. Starting off with Gluga Dualies and Tetra Dualies, they had their Japanese names as temporary placeholders, being Kelvin 525 and Air Hopper Black, or Air Hopper White if you're Light Tetras, or Kelvin 525 Deco whatsoever in English. I'm glad they scrapped these names and not only had them like as temporary placeholders compared to the final names, which is Gluga Dualies and Tetra Dualies. But like, I don't know, these names feel out of place, especially like I felt like Air Hopper Black and White would have caused a lot of controversy for some reason in my mind. I don't know, I just felt like if that was like in the final game, that would have caused like a controversy, somehow blow up on Twitter like Nintendo was racist because they put Air Hopper Black and Air Hopper White into the game. But yeah, Spot Brella was typically the same in the dev build, but Tenta Brella and Undercover were slightly different. For example, the Camping Brella was the original name for this, but I'm guessing this is just like translating from the Japanese name into the English name. So they changed it to Tenta Brella instead of sending Camping Brella. I feel like I like Camping Brella more as a name if I'm being honest. I don't know. I like this name a little bit more. And then Undercover, it is 2 words instead of 1 word, and it used to be called Undercover instead of Undercover Brella, which, by the way, going back to the Tenta Brella models, these weren't even finished by then, which I actually want to show this off a little bit real quick. So one thing that you guys need to know is that Tenta Brella was not a finished weapon at the time, and this goes for visually too. Keep this in mind, I have the hitboxes off, or like I have visual collision off, meaning that you guys can't see like the hitboxes or anything, or like the hurt boxes even. So keep this in mind. But as you can tell, like the model itself, like this wasn't even finished at the time at all. But it's really interesting to look at something like this too. I think it's just really interesting to see like what a beta Tenta Brella was like. So with that out of the way, let's go over some main weapon changes compared to the final game, or like the final version before they were launched. So one thing that like I noticed with Undercover is that this one was completely finished by before it was released publicly, and Undercover used to be a lot more different back then. Undercover was honestly kind of overtuned. Can't tell how many pellets it shoots out per shot, but it seemed like it did 12 damage per pellet, and it capped out at 48 damage, which was insane. So Undercover did a lot more damage as well, which originally as well, this used to, you know, be a true combo as well. But I think a running theory that I have had for a while is that like Nintendo thought Undercover was really OP, but then they decided to tone it back a lot before the initial release of Undercover, before it was revealed to the public. And I'm guessing that's why like Nintendo is neglecting Undercover a lot, because they don't want to have Undercover of what it is now. So I'm guessing it's kind of like they're scared of like buffing Dynamo in a sense too, or like even Hydra, if that makes sense. But I think it's really interesting to look at that. Speaking of overtuned, let's talk about something that wasn't overtuned at all. It was actually really undertuned. Squeezer used to be a completely different weapon as well, power scaling wise. And back then, Squeezer only had 1 shooting mode, which, by the way, I'm going to hold down ZR. It only had the tap fire mode only. The Squeezers used to be able to only tap fire as well. But yeah, no, Squeezer does not feel good whatsoever to use. Now, keep in mind, I'm using I have no abilities that's increasing my mobility as well. But Squeezer only had the long range mode too, which I find really interesting. But I'm kind of glad they kept in the. I'm really glad I gave it like a painting mode if you held down ZR. Otherwise, this weapon would have just felt really bland. But so I'm glad they added that in before releasing. But Squeezer felt a lot more in-tuned compared to like what we got in Splatoon 2. Oh, and by the way, there's something I want to compare with the final builds of Splatoon 2 and 3, is that the camera in the dev build feels a million times better than both Splatoon and Splatoon 3 combined. Like this game feels amazing camera-wise compared to Splatoon 2 on the final build and Splatoon 3. I don't know what it is, but the camera feels way better than what it was before in Splatoon 2 and 3. Not as good as Splatoon 1, by the way, but I'd say it's pretty damn close. Somehow Splatoon, just somehow this dev build feels way better used for the camera than the official builds in Splatoon 2 and 3, which is mind-blowing. I don't know how Nintendo fumbled with the camera for the final builds, public builds, whatever you want to call them, for again Splatoon 2 and 3. But I can't get over how good this camera feels compared to the final game. So it just makes me think like, what the fuck was going on in Nintendo going to the shitty camera that we got in Splatoon 2 and whatever mess we got in Splatoon 3. Like, Splatoon 3's camera is a complete joke to the Splatoon 2 dev camera. Or the dev build camera, excuse me. Still, regardless, like, I can't get over it. I'm sorry if I'm rambling on so much with this, but it feels amazing. We're going on with bounces next, and compared to what we have now in Splatoon 2, there wasn't really too many differences for specials that I've noticed, but there's some main weapon changes, and Sprinkler is the only sub that I've noticed that was changed. So here's a good look at that. So as you see, it bursts out like instantly. Like the area of its coverage spreads out quite a bit, and it just reaches across everywhere. And then it teeters down a lot more quicker too. But it seems like its first painting mode is a lot more stronger than it was, but didn't last quite as long. But it covers usually around this giant circle, which I think is the same size as Splashdown in Splatoon 2, if I remember correctly. But it's really interesting to think like Sprinkler used to cover a lot more area. So I think that I think that Sprinkler was gonna work really differently going up from Splatoon 1 to 2 before the initial launch of, well, Splatoon 2. So one thing with Tetris is that the dodge rolls used to travel a lot more faster, and you didn't shoot between rolls like how it is now. It also shoots faster in its turret mode versus if you're just not moving at all with Tetris. It also seems like it had better accuracy while in its turn mode, which I liked. But Tetris used to be a really different weapon. Same idea, but like executed really differently. But I think that's really interesting to like think about like how differently Tetris was. But I'm glad again that Nintendo did what they did with Tetris in the final build of the game, or like the final version that we got publicly. Because I think if Tetris was like this, I don't think they would have been as interesting as the main weapon, so I'm glad with what we got. So here in itself is the dev menu, and I think it's really interesting to look at. With one particular menu, with being this, hello world, Shadow here, :3, which I think is really funny to include. But hello Shadow, whomever you might be. This is great. :3 canon Splatoon. We gotta spread the word. But yeah, I'm gonna try to load in some unfinished maps and show what they were like before, you know, the initial release of Splatoon 2. So this is the official Splatoon 2 full dev menu, and this is more like a, you know, scene loader where, you know, it shows you like, it can take you to like the plaza, or like it load up the single player stages, the multiplayer stages, the test room, and I mean by test room, I mean by the training room, and all that other good stuff. And what they did with this game is that they brought back all the Splatoon 2, or not Splatoon 2 stages, Splatoon 1 stages, excuse me, and you know, they used them for assets for other stages, right? But there is one specific stage that really caught my attention. It was actually in the process of being brought back. So I think the stage was supposed to be brought back in Splatoon 1, because like from the looks of it, like this stage was pretty finished, all things considered. Like model-wise, this looks pretty good. It's really interesting to me. Like I bet like midway through like making throughout the stage, or like, hey, you know what? Let's save it for the next game, because I bet they were bringing back like Albacore, and I'm guessing that they didn't want to like overlap Albacore with this stage, which is really unfortunate to see, because it's like this looks like almost the exact same layout from Splatoon 1 so far, from what I can remember. I don't have a Wii U, sadly. I mean, I could boot up Splatoon 1 if I wanted to right now, using my friend's Wii U that I've been borrowing. But yeah, no, it's really interesting to see this map like somewhat modeled. Out of all the Splatoon 1 stages that did not make the cut in Splatoon 2, it seems like Mahi was originally going to be part of the Splatoon 2 stages, which is quite a shame to see, because I bet this stage would have been excellent to have in Splatoon 2, but maybe not at the same time, considering what Splatoon 2 evolved into with its meta, and we don't talk about it. So let's take a look at some other Splatoon 2 stages that, you know, weren't out yet when the game first launched, but we can have like an early look of them. So from what I remember, there wasn't too many differences with the final version and the, you know, the death build version of Manta Maria. But there was one change I felt like was really interesting that they thankfully cut out. And, you know, this is a bit of a trend in Splatoon 3, but this wall was not paintable whatsoever. So I'm really glad they kept this wall to be paintable in the final game. You know, maybe this is truly when they started like, you know, paintable walls are a little too accessible. Let's make it disabled. we hate mobility, we hate movement in Splatoon 3. Like, we hate the flow of battle and movement in our movement-based shooter. So let's cut it. Clearly that's the problem with our game. This is clearly the problem. We should add more non-paintable walls into Splatoon. That would fix everything. Dude, that would cure camp. Here we have the beta version of Snapper Canal, and there's no layout-wise. There's really nothing too different except the map was. I just kind of want to show like what maps are like before the final game. And some maps are like this in general, but I'm not going to show off for every map what they look like, because otherwise, for example, Mahi, that would have been a epilepsy, it would cause epilepsy issues in general with Mahi if I show that off. So, I didn't really want to show it off, just because of that. But yeah, layout-wise, this is pretty much the same. Everything that that was thinkable is the same. The layout for the map itself is the same. It's the same Snapper Canal that you knew in the final build, which I think is neat. For Kelp Dome, I think the lighting might have been different from what I remember, and there was a couple adjustments, or like, not adjustments, but some blocks were placed weirdly. For example, I believe if we went onto this left side of Kelp Dome, is that you'll see these floating blocks, and these floating blocks are kind of jank, all things considered. Like, if I try to swim into them, like these blocks are just weird. Like sometimes you get weird interaction like this, where I'm just like kind of floating in the air without even jumping. You'll see my squid just like doing that. I don't even know what they call this. This is it gets jank. But that's one section of the map, and then I believe, yeah, these pillows. Two of these pillows used to float. Here's one of them, and then the other pillow is right here. And then what I said, same thing with the floating block, also applies for this other side of the map. And yeah, nothing too special for Kelp Dome. So this is probably like the most underdeveloped map out of all of them that made it to the final game, and this was Mako Mart, if you could not tell from the layout. So Mako Mart, again, same thing as I explained with Snapper Canal, it had this really weird blocky shaped map. And one thing that with this map is that you can tell it's Mako Mart just by layout itself, but there was actually a couple map differences from the final game versus what we got now. I don't believe these grades were here before, so I'm assuming that back then, Splatoon 2, you could like swim and jump. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've actually played Splatoon 2 itself. But as well as I think this area right here used to be paintable, but everything you see with an X is an unpaintable area. But I think it's really interesting. But layout-wise, it's practically the same, but we'll dive more into this untextured Mako Mart. We'll dive into the naked Mako Mart, as you will. Oh, and these blocks right here, or like, was it these blocks? Yeah, these blocks, they have blocks on one side like this, but on the other, they do not have that same block whatsoever. That's right over there, which I think is interesting, all things considered. I also could be wrong, but I don't think anything like this was in Splatoon. It's Splatoon 2 or 3. Again, I could be misremembering, so if I am spreading this information, my bad. Whoops. Oh, right, and this is really weird, because like this entire section on the left and right streets, these areas that I'm standing on used to be not paintable whatsoever, so which was really weird to see. But yeah, that's Mako Mart. Well, we're gonna call it Naked Mako Mart. I don't even want to call it Mako Mart. We're calling it this bitch Naked Mako Mart. Anyways, I think that's all the stages. If not, yeah, let's move on. Now, if I remember correctly, this is, you know, we got Blackbelly Skate Park up next. And honestly, whenever the error text message appears up front like that on the top of the screen, it usually means something isn't finished here. What that finished thing is, I am not sure, as, you know, it seemed like the entire map was functional to me, the entire stage itself, except for, you know, the map layout itself. Maybe they were gonna do, like, expand the map a bit more, maybe, have, like, where these little pebbles right here were, like, you know, more accessible, I guess, you know, play outside of the map too, just a tiny bit maybe, I don't know, just coming with weird shit, I guess, just weird theories. But, unlike Naked Mako Marts, this map wasn't too interesting for, you know, before its final conception. But, yeah, that's the small showcase of the Splatoon 2 dev build, and I hope you enjoyed. Again, I just wanted to highlight, like, all the interesting things that I thought at least were interesting. Everything else that I did not show were just either crashing, and slash, or just the same shit again with the same placeholder layouts and whatnot. And a good chunk of those stage layouts as well, and I'm putting that in hard quotations, would cause a lot of epilepsy issues and just could cause potential seizures, which I just didn't want to show off in the video itself, just to avoid health risks. But yeah, again, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribing would mean a lot. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And stay foolish.